We're back with When I'm Not Podcasting, and please stop talking about pizza on dating apps. And there's other things we got to talk about when it comes to online dating that we'll talk about in this particular episode of When I'm Not Podcasting for all of you out there. So, the online dating cliche of, I like pineapple on my pizza. You've seen this on dating profiles. Well, I could tell you I've taken a break from dating profiles and dating altogether because, man, it is just getting toxic. It's just getting worse. And I don't feel like anyone's trying to make the effort to date. And then I actually just read a book just recently on the ROI, looking behind the numbers of dating, relationships, marriages, sex, all that. And all the costs that are accrued by a man to go and do that. And really the percentages don't play out well. More and more often because of online dating. I won't go into the details, but I'll just tell you that's what it is. Now, Claire Finney here from The Guardian actually tells a story about this and makes the point that it's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a dating app must reference pizza in the course of his profile. Never mind that liking pizza is about as remarkable as disliking warm beer, cold drizzle, or indeed dating apps. And her research suggests around 50 to 60% of male users consider their preference for pizza an alluring personality quirk, up there with climbing walls and Labradors when it comes to courtship displays. Now, this is a UK article, so pizza can be much different on how people like it and it's prepared over there compared to over here in the States where we have, there's a real preference on when you get a good pizza, whether it's mom and pop or a chain. Just making the point. So how can we use food and drink to communicate something of ourselves to the swiping masses? And she makes the point about using Victoria Wood's preference for Garibaldi over biscuit, suggesting the secret lies in specifics. Replace cheese with a stinky, swidgy Epoisses, or perhaps a bag of pre-grated cheddar from Sainsbury's. If pizza is so central to your sense of self, you must mention it. Detail which one, where from, what topping you always double, defend Domino's to the hilt, or signal your London metropolitan elite credentials for referencing yard sales maestro with a side of Marmite garlic bread. But there are still references to pizza, but at least you're giving the scrolling user something to chew on. And she goes along and really goes into real detail. I can't believe she actually made a whole story about this. But yeah, this is one of the things that was brought up. Now, that's one thing I heard about. But I figured that would be a good enough a clickbait to also talk about another story I wanted to talk about in this segment because it would be way too short if I did. The story about why men can't just be friends. You've heard this before. You may have heard of the movie When Harry Met Sally. The idea that men are looking to be friends with women when almost always, all the time, at least in my circles, if a guy is friends with a woman and it's outside of even if the woman is married or compromised or in a relationship, whatever it might be, there are many times than not that the guy would be attracted to the woman. In many cases. Doesn't always have to be that, but I would say about 95% of the time. Now, there was a interview from Steve Harvey 10 years ago that, speaking of the rounds on social media, I saw it on TikTok, where he was talking to Oprah and Gayle King, best buddies. So, Kayla Kibb, who I kind of reference on InsideHook.com, and her stories quite often. I'll talk about another story in a little bit, obviously. She mentions the fact about that the comments that Steve Harvey makes are very antiquated views on gender and friendship, which he expressed, which is why it's happening now, because you forget all the stupid stuff you said a decade more ago, but the internet always remembers. Keep in mind that Steve Harvey is a married man with kids. And this is also before Me Too movement. This is also still very much into his height of his popularity, hosting Family Feud, hosting a talk show, having a live radio show, morning show, across stations around the country. So again, in the middle of his peak of popularity, which he still is. So he insists in a 2010 CNN interview that he's incapable, quote unquote, of having female friends. No man is capable of maintaining a strictly platonic friendship with a woman. Why? Because there's always an underlying sexual motivation on the man's part, at least, lurking beneath even the most seemingly non-sexual relationships between two people of opposite sexes. Now, this does also not talk about guys who might be not interested in women because they feel more attached to women because they might be gay. Now, that can also be the other case. But it's or you're just friends. The rare case you have a friend, I can't say that you can't have friends that you get along with and that you really gel with like best friends, and you really do some of the like-minded stuff, and you really act like friends. You can definitely tell secrets. You can definitely tell other things, and there is the test of a friend when it comes to a man or woman, if opposite sexes, is if either one of you get into a relationship or get with someone of the opposite sex in a romantic or an intimate setup. What happens to that friendship? That's where I come from. I've always said I don't want to be friends with a woman because eventually she's going to find somebody else. And what is that guy going to do? Well, out of respect, why would I want to go ahead and be friends with her unless there's some kind of relationship where, the guy can feel jealous, the guy can feel jilted because what's this guy getting all this attention from her when she's with me? These common things will happen. And even if a guy is might be a feminist himself, the fact that someone else he wants to be the one offering the attention, or if the guy's a simp, he wants to be the one giving the attention. And if somebody else is in play here, this guy would either feel jealous or feel there's something wrong here, or be suspect or suspicious. That's where I think I come from with this. Quote, "We remain your friends in hopes that one day there will be a crack in the door, a chink in the armor," Harvey told the interviewer. "Trust, quote, and believe that that guy that you think is just your buddy, he will slide in that crack the moment he gets the opportunities because we're guys." And the argument that Harvey insisted is 99% of men, 99.9% of men, will ring a bell for anyone familiar with a 1999 rom-com named One Harry Met Sally. So you know about that movie. If you haven't, please look it up. Harvey's views, she says, Kayla here in the article, completely ignore the existence of non-straight people while relying heavily on a binary conception of gender. But even if we could restrict your interpretation of his comments to the cisgender hetero community, there are still a number of issues here. Not only does Harvey state a belief in the inherent fallibility of friendship between the sexes paint women as little more than sex objects constantly, and unwittingly vulnerable to the ulterior sexual motives of men, including those they know and trust, but it also reinforces the problematic stereotype of the perpetually, uncontrollably horny man. In addition to being inherently untrue, this myth of inalienable male horniness is one of the core tenets of toxic masculinity and responsible for the harmful notion that men either can't or needn't be held responsible for sexual aggressions with women. This is going too far. Kayla. I mean, there's a different story with where Steve might be at, because also we don't know. I mean, the people that he hangs around with, we don't know what his relationships are with other men and women. We're just assuming. But in his sense, I mean, guys would respect women in the fact that if a woman decides to go ahead and move on with somebody else, there's a relationship that comes along, they're kind of just a split off. I mean, for me, I don't like being a third wheel. And anyway, like even a guy I considered a best friend, we're not talking anymore. He got married. He has a kid. And some things happen where we're just not as close as we were. And now we're not even talking at all. It's pretty much done. But either which way, before this all broke and fell apart, I even told him I don't like to be the third wheel in any case. And when it comes to friends, from my end, I'm a bit antisocial. My friendship is with all of you listeners out there. Let's just be honest. Because I'm too consumed with work and other things that are going on with my career that I don't make, aside from family, I don't make relationships a priority. I mean, it is inherent upon all of us biologically to be able to mate and or, communicate with others and be able to interact with each other. I get that part, and there's things that I do to kind of weigh that out. But for me, if I want to talk to a woman, it's probably will be for the purpose of there will be an attraction. But then part of the thing too for me is that, I don't have an issue when it comes to working or networking. Like I mean, friends, it's very different because you would say there's friends that you are familiar with, you talk to, you meet up. It's networking from a business standpoint, from a professional standpoint. But then close friends, and I think this is where the distinction comes in, is close friends. People that you talk to all the time on the phone. People that you hang with all the time. Best friends. That is something that's very tough to do. And I know that's been portrayed in movies. Like My Best Friend's Wedding is a great example. Julia Roberts, Cameron Diaz. Think about that. It's the same idea there. And Patrick McDermott, isn't know who it was in there? Right. So the idea is, it's not Patrick McDermott. I forget. It's a McDermott, but I forget his first name. You'll go ahead and correct me in the video or in the audio whenever you get a chance. But I'm saying this because if there's any kind of an intimacy or any kind of closeness, it's different, I guess you could say, when it comes to high school or college because we're just in a different state. But I can always tell you that if there were women that I was really talking to. Now, there are some cases where the women, if they're interested in a guy, the other way goes around. Like sometimes there are definitely women that are definitely wanting to go and talk to guys as friends, but then they don't feel anything else towards them. But they want a man to validate, a man to, confirm good, better thoughts of themselves. They need the validation. They need the appreciation. They need the adoration of a man. So the friendship comes, especially if it becomes from a woman, if they want to have those kind of things that only a guy can provide. That they don't want it from a woman because it can be a little bit insincere. They want the opposite point of view. So there could be that. But the other thing, too, is that if you have friends that are among a circle of friends. So if you have friends that are, it's couples, okay? You and your partner is with them and their partner, and there's women involved in there. That's where you have a connection. But it's not a one-on-one direct connection. Or it's a connection between the fact that you're networking or you're doing some work and, you're able to go and chat it up. Like I get that all the time where I'm definitely attracted to women I'm talking to, but I'm not using that in terms of trying to get closer to them for any kind of sexual intentions. For me, it's about approaching, but attraction, it does help me to go ahead and even network better because I'll lay on the charm. I will lay on, the validation in some cases just to go ahead and really put up a good front, but also be sincere about it. I don't want to just be out there and just saying what a girl wants to say and put a girl on a pedestal. The other thing too is that if a woman wants a man to be a friend and for this to happen, there has to be a complete Dutch. It has to be everything split equally. Equal attention, equal participation, equal interest. And everybody pays their way. I mean, that's the kind of friendship it should be. But how many friendships actually go that way in the first place? That's very tough to say. And to expect it, it's already hard enough for women to go ahead and have friends or guys to have friends that are in a good sense like that. But sometimes it's because of past history that kind of leads to it. Or it could have happened back in high school or college. But now, it just depends. So I'm going to go with Kayla on the story where I can understand where she is trying to go and make the point of that some of the points were antiquated, but I think the whole spectrum of what Steve Harvey was trying to say might be misconstrued. And this is where I laid out the argument that should be said, in my opinion. I'm going to leave it there, and I'll talk to you next time.